And good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today is the 11th of June, 2020. I'm Roy Potter. Welcome as you come in. And yeah, this is going to be a serious one as things have been progressing, as you know. A couple of points that we always start out with. Yes, I have my Second Amendment cup this morning, and it is caramel cream, so I hope you're joining in with your favorite morning refreshment. You might need it. And the other question probably is what is the scene in the background? Well, let me see if I can explain. I traveled a lot of places in the world, and I took a lot of photographs of some really nasty things. And unfortunately, when I was doing that, I used a film camera. The digital cameras were just coming out, and they weren't really good. So most of my pictures are, on film. I could convert those, but it would just take a lot of time, so I haven't done it. However, when I was in Bosnia, Herzegovina, I did the PX there on the base at Camp Bootmere. Had a digital camera, and even in those days, it looked really odd. It used a little soft disk for storage, and so the resolution wasn't really good, and I couldn't really do a lot with it. So I took a few pictures with it, but most of the pictures I took were with what I had at the time was a Pentax, and it was a really good film camera. But the picture that you look at here, I took with my digital camera that I bought back then, and this is in a suburb of Sarajevo, Bosnia-Herzegovina, which of course, if you've listened to me for any length of time, you know about the Balkanization. This is where the idea came from, the Balkanization of Yugoslavia. So there was an apartment complex at one time. And if I probably could show you the bigger picture where you can see some other damage in some other places, but I figured that this was best for the resolution, this size right here. So I magnified it just enough so that you can see right here there was a lot of fighting around here, and it blew out this section of this apartment area. And there are tank tracks and all kinds of things around here. That's what your future is, ladies and gentlemen. That's what we're looking at. That's why I talk about the former Yugoslavia and the Balkanization of what happened there. And let me give you the brief history again as to what occurred. So Tito was the dictator, and he knew, like Saddam Hussein had in Iraq. Saddam Hussein had, of course, the Shiites and the Sunnis, and then all these other little sects, the Kurds, etc. And these people have hated each other for thousands of years, 1,000+ years. So the country almost needed a dictator. It's not a good thing, but it's just the way it is. It's the situation. Not good, but we shouldn't have been sticking our nose in it, because then we're just replacing the dictator. Well, the same thing happened in Yugoslavia. Tito had a couple of problems. He had the Bosniaks, he had the Croatians, and he had the Serbs. The Serbs are the Protestant Christians. The Bosniaks were the Muslims, and the Croatians were Catholics. So that's the problem he had, okay, basically. And these groups were fighting against each other. So when Tito came in Yugoslavia, he took the dictatorial control. If anybody got out of line and started fighting with each other, he put the insurrection down, or the fighting down. Well, when he died, I'll just say the New World Order, actually it's the United States and NATO, saw an opportunity to get in there and again get another area under their control that was close to Russia. There were some other things in Yugoslavia that were resources that they wanted to have some control over, etc. And so as this war broke out between the Bosniaks, the Serbs, and the Croats, and it was really bad. The largest cemetery in the world is in Sarajevo. It's huge. And I would have put a picture of that up, but again, that's on film. So I'm just stuck with this for now. But at any rate, so when Tito died and this big war broke out, the NATO and the United States got involved supposedly to bring peace, but of course it's really to inflict the banking system and all that wanted to get control of Yugoslavia. So Clinton started bombing the Serbs, and a lot of innocent people were killed because just too bad, collateral damage. A lot of refugees that were just trying to get out of the battle zones. Clinton bombed them. Men, women, and children, not involved in the fight, just trying to get out. Accidents happen in war. Well, this wasn't even a declared war. This was supposed to be a police action. It was just like all the other things we do. It's an overreaction, but it's because we want to beat the people down. I'm sorry, that's just the case. And there's some other factors involved here, but the important thing to remember is that it basically broke the former Yugoslavia up into several areas. Remember that happened to Russia after Russia fell. Russia fell, and it broke down into Russia itself, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Georgia, all those things. Well, Georgia's still part, but I think you get the idea. It broke it up. The same situation happened in Yugoslavia. That's why we call that process of breaking a country up into areas Balkanization. So at any rate, they still have not. It's been many years now since I've been there, but I would suspect that things are probably not much better now than they were when I was there. That's what's happening here in the United States. We are slowly moving towards that. And unfortunately, our intelligence community, the FBI, the leftist Marxists in our government, including people like Pelosi and Schumer, as I've talked about before, and there are many others, Obama, the Clintons, etc., we go on down the list, want this to happen because China is what they want, that model in the world. So you wonder why nothing's happening against Antifa. There are a few things. I did see, as I mentioned the other day, I did mention that there were obviously some federal officers that grabbed an Antifa leader off the street. Some of that is happening, but it's too little and it's too late at this point. And we're going to talk about that. Before I go any further, can everybody let me know if the sound is okay? That's a big thing I worry about. I can see the picture, but I'm never really sure how the sound is. Hopefully it's okay. And then we will continue. Oh, Dush, you still use a Pentax K1000? I have a K1000 too. That's not the one I was using. I was using an electronic camera. I can't remember the model of it now, but it was a good camera. I liked it. So is the sound okay, everybody? I just need to know if that's okay. It looks like it is because nobody's complaining that they can't hear me. Okay. All right. Yeah, I guess it's all right. Good. Thanks, Edelson. and I neglect to do this often. I want to thank those who help me out by being mods. Edelson's one. Nancy of Headlines with a Voice is one. Kay Smalls is one. And I always forget somebody. So I apologize. There's another one, Jesse of BP Earthwatch, and then there's one other, and forgive me for forgetting the name of the person that it is. Anyway, all of you help me out a lot, and I appreciate it. And if you see somebody being nasty, please feel free, of course. Okay, I don't care if they're arguing my points or somebody else's points, but if they're name calling, of course, or calling me a traitor or shill or whatever, just boot them. That's not an argument. Okay, and thanks ahead of time for doing that. So here we are. What caused me to get concerned last night? Well, I've been concerned all along. Here several days ago, of course, I came up and I told you that things were going to get really bad, that we're going to see some really bad things happen. And then they did. I mean, it was almost immediate. I couldn't believe how fast it was. It was almost like the next minute after I got done, things just went crazy. And it's been that way ever since. And we're seeing little lulls here and there. And I'm not going to explain all of that. I don't think I need to. But what did happen was, and Nancy Morgan Hart put up a video about it this morning, about basically the seizure of the no-go zone now in Seattle, including City Hall. That, when I saw that yesterday, I called my daughter. Most of you know that I travel to Washington State quite often. I have family up there. And, of course, I'm concerned for them. And I called her. This is before I talked to anybody else, okay? And I told her basically what I'm going to tell you today. There are some other things I'm going to add, and you'll know about that in a few minutes as we get going. But I told her this. I said basically, and this is what we're going to talk about today. We've gone from the phase where they're out just merely rioting, and it's basically a maneuver stage, to where they're now seizing objectives. They're seizing land. In other words, when you're doing a military operation, you start off with a psychological operation, then you attack the logistics and communications, then you start moving things around to keep the enemy off guard and to try to outmaneuver them. But the whole point of that is eventually to seize terrain and hold it. And that's where we are, ladies and gentlemen. This is no game anymore. This is nothing that Governor Inslee should be recalled by the people right now. But of course, it's a liberal state. So what's happening is that they're, everybody's wondering, well, how come they're attacking the people that support them? Because they'll let them. Because the plan, they don't care about the people of their state. They don't care about the states. This is about the takedown of the United States of America. These people are traitors. That's why I brought up the other day, Mark Pantano was very right about this, that the governors have to ask the president for help, with the Insurrection Act. He can't just go in there unless they attack, federal facilities or violate federal law. It's something the president really can't do. So the way to go about it, and I said this, but politically I'm sure they won't, they're not going to indict the governors. I listed some the other day of governors that have Blagojevich or whatever his name was from Illinois, and I gave you a whole bunch of others that have been indicted, arrested, and all that over the last few years. And we've also arrested presidents of countries. I'm not saying that was a good thing, but we went after Noriega and we went after Maduro. So Maduro hasn't been collared yet, but they've got an indictment out for him. So the point is, what is D.C. waiting for? What is the federal government waiting for with these governments, these governors, and these mayors that are allowing this stuff to happen? I realize Mark Pantano said yesterday, because I brought up, is there anything that can be done here at all? And he says, no, it's a state issue. If the states want them to, have control over an area and they're not willing to get in there and take control of it, well, the president's still stuck. The state is the one that's allowing this. Then I thought about some things that have happened in the past. And maybe we should do the same thing, It seems to work because nobody seems to want to do anything about it. You just got to find a governor that's willing to let you do it, and a mayor. I won't go there. Let's give some other background information. So they had the riots. Now they've taken over the Seattle City Hall Center. They have a no-go zone. They're actually doing criminal behavior. They're according to the information we have. You can't go in unless you're patted down, you're searched, all that. They're shaking down the local businesses for food, money, etc., for protection. And the bad thing is, and like I told my daughter, the next step is they're going to move to, you're going to see a seizure in another area. This is going to start happening if this isn't turned around today, and when I say today, I mean like right away. If this isn't turned around right away, this is going to happen more and more, and it's going to start on the coasts. It's a military operation. It's going to start on the coasts, like a beachhead. They'll solidify their positions there, and then they'll start moving. When I say on the coast, like in Seattle, I got word this morning that they've actually occupied another area. They've grabbed another. I expect that they're going to go to the state capital at some point. But as it sits right now, they have gone to another area and seized it. When they see that there's no reaction against this, it's going to happen in more places in Washington, more places in Oregon, California. You're going to see it in New York, probably Maryland, close to D.C., and some other areas. Once they get those, and I'm not saying they won't do places like Chicago and etc., but it's real obvious that this is a pincer movement, and nobody's reacting to it in a timely or effective manner. So we have these governors and these mayors that are going along with this, and I'm certain that in some way, shape, or form they have violated some law somewhere. It's an AG Barr doesn't seem to be interested in doing anything about that. And of course, the Department of Defense is full of leftist Marxists, so they're apparently not given to do much about it either. And at this point, they couldn't, except, as I said, I do believe that they could do surgical strikes against logistics, communications, and of course, command and control of this. And we know who's doing it. They know who's doing it. It's just that they don't have the resolve because it's doing what they want. You understand the IC? Slurp, slurp. It's hot. I made it sure it was hot to last a little longer today. On a side note, the FBI issued some information yesterday. Guess who they're calling the most dangerous problem in America today? I think most of you already know. The conservative movement, the white supremacist movement. All this stuff is going on with Antifa and Black Lives Matter and all of that, which are nothing more at this point. You notice how, and I'm going to mention that again in a minute, Black Lives Matter. What's happened is they're saying, oh, it's the white conservative constitutionalists that are the biggest danger. Why are they saying that? Because that's the narrative. The narrative, in order to take down the United States, you have to use racial divide, and the FBI is assisting in that at this point. Ray should be fired by Trump today. But of course he won't be. It won't happen. Frankly, I'd fire, I probably would. I'd fire Barr today. This is just outrageous. So the FBI has shifted its attention to you. Why? Because they know at some point in time there's going to reach a flashpoint. And people will look at the guy who pulled the gun wherever that was, that Fernandez guy. They said he was a white supremacist, but he's Hispanic. He didn't ram anybody. He wasn't running over anybody. They surrounded him. The guy reached in the car. He tried to protect himself, and he goes to jail. But that's what's happening. They're going to force an issue. And the way they can do it is by falsely blaming you. And they say, it's not us. But they know at some point, there's going to be a stand-up against this tyranny, against this takeover of the country, and it's going to be primarily, I'm not saying just, let's just say constitutionalist, conservative type people are going to react, and then they'll be able to say, see, they did this. Never mind what Black Lives Matter or Antifa or the leftist Marxists are doing. That doesn't matter. So that's where we're headed. Black Lives Matter, I'm seeing it all over the place now in Utah and in Wyoming as well. People writing it on, I haven't seen anybody kneel here yet or up, but they're definitely pushing it. So it's being used, and they're forward operators. BLM and Antifa at this moment are tools of the leftist Marxists. There is no systemic racism in the United States. We now know, of course, for those of you who are following us, CNN had a report on it, I think it was yesterday or the day before. Just like we said at the start, this cop and this Floyd knew, as a matter of fact, they all knew each other. They had worked together at different bars as security. They apparently had some other intimate relationships of one sort or another. And this wasn't a racial killing. This was a hit or a disagreement over something. And we don't know what it is because we still don't know what happened in Las Vegas. Nobody's really explained what really happened on 9/11. You think they're going to say this? No, because they want the discord. And President Trump's going along with it. I'm sorry, there's no other explanation. Oh, they've got a gun to his head, they won't let him speak. Well, this is called courage. Okay? You have to do the right thing, and if you refuse to do so, then you're part of the problem. So that's where this is. So we've moved across into a very dangerous phase right now. Washington State, Governor Inslee is apparently not going to do anything about it. Certainly the mayor of Seattle isn't. They're starting to grab other towns to other areas, and this will fester. If it's not crushed right away by these states, and they're not going to do it, it's pretty obvious. Idaho might put up a control on the border. I don't know. Oregon, of course, will not. California, of course, will not. Idaho will probably, if they're smart, if that governor's smart, he needs to activate his National Guard right now. Utah, the same thing. Nevada, the same thing. Everybody should be activating their National Guard right now to put this down. At some point in time, and again, like I said yesterday, I really wish that Mark Pantano and Rich Higgins and myself and maybe Nancy Morgan Hart or somebody else could get together, even on a round table. I just don't have any way of doing that. I can call into somebody else, but I can't really do it here. So let's see what's going on. I don't know what that was. I get these notifications all the time. There's got to be some way that based on what I said before about the crimes being committed, the RICO, the conspiracy, whatever, of the governors. I mean, you can at least arrest them on some minor charge, the governors and the mayors, etc., and get somebody in there. The legislatures are still a problem. You see what's happened? They've taken over so much. But the other states really need to get ready. And I'm going to say this right here. You're not overreacting by activating your National Guard right now. You're not overreacting. They are coming, and they are seizing terrain now. If you allow them to keep it, now there's another possibility here, and I'm just going to mention this. There's a thing called you fix the enemy. If they want to go, it's like in martial arts. If you're fighting somebody and they make the mistake of grabbing a hold of you, you don't pull away. You anchor it down. It's called fixing the enemy. And then you can do all kinds of things with it. You can throw them just from that. So in military parlance, what happens is when you attack an enemy, you use part of your attack to fix the enemy in a certain location so you can maneuver around them. That's what needs to happen against this right now. And it needs to happen today, as I've said. But this is the takedown of the United States. And I think, I noticed somebody earlier, they were talking about that this is being staged. It's not real in Seattle. Oh, no, it's real. I guarantee you it's real. And it's going to happen elsewhere. This is the beta test to see how far we'll put up with it. And they're going to put up with it in Washington, Oregon, California, New York, probably Illinois, Maryland, as I said, very likely, and there's some other places. I was very disappointed with the way Texas Governor Abbott has approached this. I think he's going to be a problem in the long run. Well, he's a Bushite, so what would you expect? So that's where we are right now. I'm going to go into some particulars now, and then we'll talk about some things that you're bringing up in chat. So let me do this. Again, I use my phone these days for notes. I want to start off and just say a few things, okay? And I'm going to quote Rich Higgins here. Rich Higgins is he was in the White House, as you recall. I interviewed him, and they actually interrupted my interview by changing some of the settings at YouTube, and it was a terrible thing. So I put up, that was really nasty of them to do that. But then I had a second camera because I just had a gut feeling this was going to happen. And I had a second camera, and I recorded the entire interview almost, minus maybe 5 minutes at the end. And I put that up, and on there the sound is better. I think some of you will recall that happened. So it was a really nasty situation that they did, but I've talked to Rich Higgins before. He was in the White House. He wrote an article along with Ezra Cohen Watnick. I think that's, or Watnick Cohen, I can't remember which way it goes, and some others to warn the president of this coup. Well, they had already gotten rid of Flynn, so they needed to make sure that nobody else was aware of what was going on, and that's why I'm very suspicious of Trump, because he didn't do anything to stop this. He didn't apparently there was no kickback from Trump at all on any of this, which sounds like to me that maybe he didn't want these insiders to find out that he was actually involved. And I'm sorry, but that's the way I look at it now. So they got rid of Rich Higgins, probably pulling his hair out here, hearing me say this right now. But that's how I look at it, Rich, okay, if you're watching. So Rich left. He was also a part of, and he works with it today, Unconstrained Analytics. I brought it up before, unconstrainedanalytics.com, I believe it is. And you can read all of his writings on there and those of his, the people that he works with. His folks there at Unconstrained Analytics, and you can see where he's coming from. His colleagues are very, very good. So let me go to some things here that I think are important. I'm going to read. Rich put out a tweet yesterday, which was really interesting. Like I said, I saw this and told my daughter, look out, and also some other family members up there who were really close to this. The other family members are actually closer than she is. And I said, look out, this is going to start moving to other places. Okay? So when I did that, it wasn't long before that I saw that Rich had this tweet up, and I'm going to read it. And I already asked him if I can do it. Of course, it's public information now, but I want to bring it up. The first one I want to read is, yeah, I'm gonna go to that one in a minute. I'm gonna go to this one first. As Antifa, this is Rich Higgins talking, and he's absolutely correct. You know, when I looked at it from a military, strategic, and tactical point of view, also psychological operations, etc., and I saw this. And then Rich put it up, and I went, good on you, Rich. So here we go. As Antifa shifts to maneuver warfare, they apply political pressure, foment future riots, destroy cultural targets, that's what the communists do, via direct action or pressured corporate compliance, escalate killing of police and anti-communist public figures. That's the next thing that's going to happen. They're going to start doing assassinations. Seek international recognition and money. I wonder who that will be. Well, they've already got it from Soros, but that's an NGO, right? That's a private organization. Who's going to start funding them? Well, the Chinese are. And I hate to admit it, probably the Russians at this point. I mean, they see a weakness, why not exploit it? It's unfortunate. I wish Putin would not get involved in this, but I'm not certain he won't. Not with all the shit that our people have done to the world. Wouldn't surprise me at all. We've already seen some of this. People, we were warning that they would start assassinations. Remember the California deputy that a bomb went off and then he got shot. Okay, and then some other deputies were hurt. We've seen police officers and people shot all over the country. They found bombs that had been made but haven't been used yet, and you know there are more. The sleeper cells are active, and they're going to become more and more active, especially when they see that the governors of these states are not going to act, but are in bed with these takedowns of the government, even their own governments. Okay, so that's basically what the rundown with Rich is. I'm gonna read through those again because I want you to make sure you understand this is progressing into a very serious situation. As Antifa shifts to the maneuver warfare and seizing terrain, apply political pressure. They've already been doing that. Foment future riots, of course. Destroy cultural targets via direct action or pressured corporate compliance. They've been pulling down the statues. For instance, they've been defacing monuments. They've gotten the corporations to go along with it and say how great BLM is in Antifa, if not directly, at least around. And the corporations you think are doing that just to save their bacon. No, they're complicit with this. Most of them are complicit with this. The next phase. They've already started this, but now it's going to get serious if this isn't reacted to in Seattle and other places where they're starting to seize terrain. Escalate killing of police and anti-communist public figures. You're going to see that real soon. The police in Seattle are some of them are retired, some of them are just giving up and leaving. We've already seen that in New York. And again, I've been very concerned about the heavy-handedness of the police in the United States for a long time. Unjust things that they've done. And unfortunately, it has been, people don't want to admit it hasn't just been a bad officer here or there. It has been entire departments. But again, I think that's been done on purpose. I saw the selection process, the training and all of that, and how it shifted from a use of force continuum that was reasonable to one where it was not. So I think this was all a planned escalation of police abuse, is what I think. We need to go back to personal responsibility. It used to be you could sue a police officer for violating your civil rights. The feds have this immunity thing. All that needs to change. Okay? And before I go any further, I want to tell you how this is different from what happened at Bundy Ranch, for instance, and what happened at Malheur in Oregon, if you remember those things involving the Bundys. And another incident. I actually knew some of the leaders of the American Indian movement. and met them, not as friends, but they were acquaintances. I met them, and the situation that happened at Wounded Knee in the 70s, it was basically because of the control of the federal government over these people, and so the American Indian movement, led by Russell Means and by David Hill and some others, took over the Wounded Knee area, and they were armed, but they weren't destroying property. They weren't really hurting anybody. They occupied the area. Well, it was a really bad situation. Fortunately, nobody got killed, as I remember, but it really was a peaceful demonstration, even though they took over the territory. Okay, as a political statement. We've seen that happen in other protests as well. Okay, we have, but it wasn't long with the destruction of property and the killing of people. The Bundy Ranch thing, it wasn't even occupying federal or governmental structures or anything. It was merely saying to the federal government, especially the Bureau of Land Management, this is wrong that you're stealing this, because that's what they were doing, stealing this property from the American people and using those resources for the benefit of the likes of Harry Reid, Hillary Clinton, and the Chinese. And they sent an army against the Bundys. Basically, it's what it was, militarily equipped. They had an Apache helicopter, they had drones, they had aerial surveillance, they had sniper teams with women and children at picnic tables. That's your federal government and the people that control it. And Trump should be ashamed of himself for not stopping this. I thought he was going to, but he didn't. Malheur was another thing. Again, they got there, and I'm not saying I agree with taking over these things. I wouldn't do that myself. Okay, and I told the people at the time, this is the wrong thing to do. The demonstration down in, I think it wasn't, I forget the name of the town that they were in. The demonstration there was fine, but taking over the federal building, there are pros and cons on that argument. But again, even though they were armed like they were at Wounded Knee, there was no destruction of property, no injuries dealt to anybody. They had demands. And frankly, in my situation, the way I look at it, they were legitimate demands. But the FBI was ready to go in there and kill them all over occupying. Well, what's going on in Seattle where these Antifa and these BLM have killed people, have injured people, haven't just taken over property, and now they're shaking people down for support. And nothing. Oh, it takes time, Roy. We've got to investigate. No, you haven't got time. When the enemy starts to seize property, starts to seize terrain, you better do something, and you better do it quickly. So again, how did the FBI react? Well, Rich Higgins, he brings up this thing about, and I'll read it to you, in Gateway Pundit. What a joke. After Antifa and Black Lives Matter riot and loot across America and killing people, basic American people, the American people themselves, and cops, hurting National Guard, injuring them. What a joke. After Antifa and Black Lives Matter riot and loot across America, FBI sends out memo warning white supremacists pose greatest risk of violence. Ray needs to be fired, and the FBI needs to be totally disbanded. But it's part of the IC. And Trump did nothing. And I said, if he didn't act like a bully when he came into the presidency and use some initiative and kick the ass of these people, I don't care what the backlash would have been, that we would arrive at this place that we're at right now. And he still does nothing. And he's pushing ahead on the COVID-19. They're bringing that up again, right? Wuhan virus. They're using everything, and he's letting them do it. He's still pushing warp speed, Operation Warp Speed. I had somebody say the other day, Trump's not pushing vaccines. The hell he ain't. He even met with Gates about it prior to all this. And now we know, as Nancy Morgan Hart put out the other day, that Gates and these people met about the contact tracing contracts, $100 billion contracts to do the contact tracing. That should stop right now. Trump should say, no, we're done with that. The states, does he have control in the states? No, but you at least got to strike at the head of the snake. Nothing. No, he's behind it. He's supporting it. Do you get that? Stop protecting this guy. He is in there to placate you, to sedate you, and to think that you're winning, and you're not. He is part of the execution of liberty in the United States of America. So, Rich Higgins, I don't mean to say Rich Higgins feels that way, but he does feel the way I do about the FBI. So he quotes what I just told you from Gateway Pundit. And you can go look at his Twitter line and see it. What a joke. After Antifa and Black Lives Matter riot and loot across America, FBI sends out memo warning white supremacists pose greatest risk of violence. And again, why are they doing that? Because if you react to this, then they can say you're a terrorist. Do you see that? You can't protect yourself. They're trying to checkmate you. They're trying to get the white people riled up so that they do something. And unfortunately, that may have to happen because nobody's protecting us. Nobody. And I don't mean just the white people. I would like to say, because they're great conservatives. I mean, look at the Black Conservative Patriot. I'm sure some of you follow him. Larry Pickney, who used to be part of Black Panthers. So it's not just a racial thing, but that's where they're actually using it, and that's what the FBI is trying to do here. And Trump won't rein him in. All he have to do is write an order to the FBI and say cease and desist. But he won't do it. Man, we got a know-nothing, no-do-nothing guy in there who's helping to bring down the United States, pretending like he's saving it, and he's not. Tucker Carlson, the Columbia Bugle, put this out yesterday or the day before. If you've been watching Tucker Carlson, I have some questions about Tucker. I'm not certain where he's really coming from, but he does do great analyses, okay, and great commentary. I'm not saying that I'm totally in his ballywick. There's some questions to me, as is the case with Alex Jones and others. But let me just read this, okay? This is from the Columbia Bugle. Tucker Carlson's segment on the BLM Seattle Autonomous Zone. Tucker on Governor Inslee's weak response. Quote, as long as we have leaders like that and as long as they refuse to stand up to extremists, we're going to get more extremism. That's happening. What did I just say? Jack Posobiec put out last night, and it's very true, as I just mentioned. Antifa mob is planning to take over more Seattle neighborhoods. That's true. I warned my daughter about that and my other family members up there. In New York City, I'm going to shift to the other side now. John Cardillo, if any of you follow him, very close to a lot of law enforcement officers, has a lot of contacts, and this is what he said in a tweet. It was probably yesterday. It was. From an NYPD source. Notice the Wiener laptop information's not coming out. Oh, it's a matter of national security, the FBI says. Yeah. No, they're protecting the guilty, which is what the FBI does. It needs to be disbanded. It's nothing more than a protection law enforcement arm of the leftist Marxists. NYPD source. Quote, we've been told not to even touch criminals unless you want to get collared or lose your job yourself. And I believe that's the case. Again, there are police officers in Seattle that are talking about just dropping and walking away. And that's exactly what they want. And then what's going on with Ilhan Omar and all this stuff in Minneapolis? The mayor and the governors of Minnesota, Minneapolis, all that, what are they doing? Oh, we want our own police. We want to get rid of the police, which really means we want to put ours in there that are going to support our agenda. That's all that is. And it's not going to be based on the Constitution. It's going to be racketeering. It's going to be criminal. It's going to be communist. It's going to be Sharia. It's going to be chaos. If you're the wrong color, doesn't matter what you did, you're going to jail. If you speak out against something, they'll take away your First Amendment right, even put you in jail for it. Look what the Chicago mayor has been doing. She looks like an alien to me. Does anybody think maybe she's a gray in a bodysuit, a human bodysuit? That's what she looks like to me. Along with this thing that the FBI did, I'd like to read this. This is from the New York Post, and this might be a little difficult for me to do because I've got to take it off of here, but let me see if I can read this because this is important. I can't even see it. So I'll have to do this. White supremacists and racist domestic terrorists pose the largest threat of violence in the United States amid nationwide protests across the country, according to a new intelligence bulletin. This is going along with this BS from the FBI again. Again, white supremacists and racist domestic terrorists. Okay, so they include that, but it's almost like an excuse. The bulletin, which was sent to local law enforcement by the FBI, Department of Homeland Security, and National Counterterrorism Center, and reported by ABC News, warns of threats by left-wing and anarchist groups as well. But it barely mentions Antifa as a potential violent group, though federal lawmakers have called for the loosely affiliated movement to delabel a terror group amid nationwide protests against police brutality. And this is the quote from the report. We assess the greatest threat of lethal... This is the FBI report. We assess the greatest threat of lethal violence continues to emanate from lone offenders with racially or ethnically motivated violent extremist ideologies and domestic violent extremists with personalized ideologies, the bulletin states according to ABC News. In other words, they want to call everybody the enemy. If you defend your property against these leftist Marxists in Seattle or across the country, you're going to be labeled a white supremacist and a terrorist. Do you see how they cornered us here? Colonel Kurt Schlichter, who I follow on Twitter, and I've talked about him before along with some others. This is what he said, and he's absolutely right. The senior military leadership supports the establishment's attempt to silence and oppress you. Understand that. What have I been saying for how long? That I can't trust the military? Now, he's saying the senior military leadership, but you see the problem. Dinesh D'Souza, good point here. Quote, our primary purpose in having a government is for self-protection. If that's withdrawn, we owe our government nothing. Boy, he's sounding pretty radical, kind of like me, isn't he? Not even taxes. Without protection, we are back to the state of nature, and it's every man for himself. Let me read that to you again. This is from he spent time in prison. Obama threw him in prison for organizing a donation to President Trump's campaign. Obama didn't go after Hillary Clinton, who did even worse stuff. Much worse stuff. Let me read again what he said here, because this has been my sentiments for a long time for anybody who's followed me. Our primary purpose in having a government is for self-protection. If that's withdrawn, we owe our government nothing, not even taxes. Without protection, we are back to the state of nature, and it's every man for himself. Inslee's a criminal. He's at least conspiratorial in what he's doing to his people in Seattle. I am certain that if Barr used a little effort, he could indict him on something before this thing gets any further. This is a quote from Lysander Spooner, and it was sent out by Markey123567. Thank you, Markey. I'm gonna say this because I think it's very good. You know how I support and defend the Constitution, but I also know, and I've quoted Judge Learned Hand and others who said that the Constitution won't protect you unless liberty is in the hearts and minds of men and women. If it's not there, there's no Constitution, no court, no executive branch, no army that will protect it. Because the Constitution depends upon men and women to support it. And where are they? So there is a weakness to it. We reverted back not to a constitutional form of government, but to a tyranny. A bureaucratic tyranny at this point, but a tyranny nevertheless. Quote, but whether the Constitution really be one thing or another, this much is certain, that it has either authorized such a government as we have had, or has been powerless to prevent it. In either case, it is unfit to exist. I can't disagree with that. If we have lost our principles, that's why I was on Trump so hard. Stop talking nonsense and stand by principle. Have a little internal fortitude. Stand for principle. Because otherwise, what do we got? Bureaucratic tyranny, medical tyranny, governmental tyranny. If the Constitution can't stop it because we won't enforce the principles of the Constitution, well, it's effectively non-existent, isn't it? And that's really what we've seen over the last few years. So let me read this again. Quote, pay very close attention. Quote, but whether the Constitution really be one thing or another, this much is certain, that it has either authorized this tyranny that we're seeing now, such a government as we have had, or has been powerless to prevent it. In either case, it is unfit to exist. And that includes all three branches of government have been in on this. Listen to Mark Pantano. He'll tell you basically that's all about that. Okay, let me see if there's anything else here. Anything else I want to bring up. Yeah, I know about the whole thing with that this is all based on. Floyd's pictures on the Obama Foundation tweet line. The possibility that Floyd and these cops are all CIA operatives. All that's possible. Alex Jones had a thing out yesterday where, the coffin's too short and it's too light. There are all kinds of problems with this, but there were all kinds of problems with the Las Vegas shooting. There were all kinds of problems with the situation at the Pulse nightclub, with the shooting at the high school in Florida there, with 9/11, with the Boston bombing. We've seen government actually do things and use military tactics and weaponry against citizens, like at Waco, Bundy Ranch, Ruby Ridge. And yet, what are they doing against Antifa? Nothing. At Waco, the locals didn't want to do anything about it. Sort of like the arguments that Pantana's saying, hey, if the locals don't want to do anything about it, you got to leave it alone. It's a state issue. What happened? The feds wanted those people. So they made up violations of ATF regulations and laws on firearms. They made them up. And Janet Reno said, we have to do something because there's child abuse there. Where does the federal government have any jurisdiction in child abuse? Nowhere. That was nothing more than a cover story. So they could come up with BS and kill all those women and children, but they won't save women and children and the innocent against Antifa and against Black Lives Matter and against this leftist Marxist thing that Pelosi and Schumer are the public face of. What does that tell you? I'm going to adjust this camera just a bit. Sorry. So what does that tell you? We have enemies in our government leadership, representative positions, and nobody's taken them out. They won't even take out a governor like Inslee. Do you see how serious this is getting? This is an insurrection. This is a revolution. It is moving. It is happening now. And they're going to move to the next phase, which is what? They're going to start killing, assassinating. The war is going to go into a kinetic situation. Unless it's crushed right now. So with Mark Pantano, I understand where you're coming from, Mark. I agree with you 100%. But this is a war in the United States. This is no longer just a disturbance of the domestic tranquility. This is foreign agents and people acting foreign in behalf of foreign agents attacking our country. That makes them an enemy. So, Mark, I'm going to have to disagree with you at this point. This is a situation where drastic times call for drastic measures. Is it a violation of the Constitution? I can understand what you're saying. We still have the problem with Article 4 that the governors have to ask for the help. But they're not going to, Mark. They're part of the problem. And you'll say, so what? The legislature still hasn't asked for it. And I know that. Then the answer, and this is what I've called for from the beginning, are surgical strikes against the foreign agents. At a minimum. Because if we don't do that, and I'm not saying the federal government will, they won't, because they're in on it, and I know that. But what I'm saying is this all proves my point, that the war is against the American people and our government is complicit in its execution. So where does that leave us? Ladies and gentlemen, if you're not ready, you're not going to get ready. As I mentioned the other day, gun stores in Utah and Wyoming are almost empty. Ammunition, you have to bring now a birth certificate in California to get ammunition in California. The UN, as I said yesterday, has called for the Second Amendment right is not as important. It should be eliminated because black lives are more important than the Second Amendment, even though blacks rely on the Second Amendment as well. As Mark Pantano said, there's not much that the UN can do overtly, but there's a lot they can do in subversion, and they are. We have had Chinese troops and Russian troops in America in the past training for civil disturbance operations against the American people. Yes, we have. Can you imagine that idiocy? You can thank people like Petraeus and Obama and, well, all those flag officers that are in there now. And then they're turning the weapons of war against us here in the United States. Not against Antifa, not against the Black Lives Matter, but against Americans. What did McChrystal just do? Nancy Morganhart talked about this. It's also on Twitter. I've talked about it. McChrystal, who jumped ship to go to the coup side, along with McRaven and Mattis and McMaster and all those other aberrations. McChrystal is involved in using geospatial intelligence, the Jade Helm project, all of that, to spy on Americans and find out who the Trump supporters are. And I guarantee you it's not just to counter their position with propaganda. That's not the only reason they're doing it. Trump has exposed all of us and has shown that he will not protect those who stood up for liberty in this country. He's done nothing. And I'm not going to accept anybody's explanation that he has his hands tied and nobody's helping him. I'm tired of that. Then he needs to come clean. And he won't. He's pushing vaccines. He's pushing the mark of the beast. He's friends with Gates. He keeps Fauci and Birx up there. They're now pushing a second wave. They're attacking us from all sides. They're overwhelming us with mass. And nobody's doing anything to stop it. Trump is complicit. Sorry, Rich. Sorry, Colonel Schaefer. Sorry, Colonel Schuchter. Sorry, Colonel Manus. Sorry, Michael Savage. Sorry, Dan Bongino. You better start calling it out the way it is. Now, the retired military, I understand. The UCMJ will not let you disparage the president. I understand that. But calling him out for his wrongdoing, you don't have to cuss him like I do. But you can at least call out what he's doing wrong. And he's doing lots of stuff wrong. He's not just not doing things. He's doing stuff that is wrong. The Nuremberg trials and the Geneva Convention say you can't force medical procedures on people. And yet we're going to do it to the American people and to the world? This is wrong. And nobody, from Tucker Carlson to nobody's calling Trump out for being behind this. State governors are going along with it. They just introduced legislation. Well, I guess it's a legislative committee at this point. As soon as the legislature's back in, though, they'll bring it up to the floor to mandate testing for COVID and vaccinations in Utah. Well, I said the other day that Utah is part of the area where you could probably flee from things in these liberal states, and that you need to look at regions. The problem with Utah is it does bow the knee to the federal government whenever the federal government says jump. It does. And I've known that. It's because these are part of the secret society here. The upper echelons of the Mormon church are part of the secret societies. It's not just their temple stuff that they do, it's other stuff. They're very much in bed with the FBI, the CIA, etc. Evil stuff. So it doesn't surprise me, and maybe that's why Christopher Green didn't mention Utah in his list of states that you could go to. But I mentioned Utah because I still think that there is a base here that still understands that they might not do anything about it, but if there was no other place that you could go, this might be a possibility. But there are some questions about that. Until we get rid of this, well, Herbert is the governor in Utah right now, and I have a sneaking suspicion that Cox isn't going to get in, who I'm not sure would be any better, but guess who's up for the grab of it? Huntsman. Huntsman? Utah might as well kiss its ass goodbye. It's going to be part of the New World Order. Willingly. So Christopher Green was probably right that Utah isn't a place that you should go. Wyoming's still a possibility. Idaho, despite its governor, is still a possibility. Even though Nevada has a really nasty governor right now, I forget how you say his name. I think the Nevadans are going to throw him out. That's kind of how it's looking at this point. Let's hope so anyway. Of course, Montana and the Dakotas. That region. Again, you have to think regions, not little pockets of resistance, because those will get wiped out because you won't have any support. So that's my presentation for the day. Again, the bottom line is that the leftist Marxist communist revolution, Bolshevik revolution in America is well underway. It's following the Maoist template, and we are headed to disaster. And unfortunately, if you defend yourselves, you'll be considered the domestic terrorists, guaranteed. But we might have no other thing to do. We're gonna have to get together. Let me just mention a couple other things. They are in fact shifting. As I said, they're shifting from this terror war, this guerrilla war, to one of maneuver where they're seizing terrain. That's a very important thing to understand. They're testing it right now. They're just temporarily holding it. I don't think they have any long-term plans to do that. At this point, it's obvious. They didn't have the like they had the bricks, everywhere before, all set up. There's no logistical support for these people up there in Seattle. They're having to shake down the businesses. The main thing, what wins wars isn't shooting your gun. I mean, that helps. But what really wins wars is logistical support. And anybody who has a military background will understand that. So these people went up there and they did this. So it's basically a test. Even the controllers aren't considering that this is going to last, because they really anticipated there'd be a response, and there hasn't been one. The governor didn't do anything, the mayor didn't do anything, and the police are quitting their jobs. And the National Guard, from what I understand, hasn't even been called up. So if that's the case, the controllers, Obama and Soros and the people that are controlling Antifa and BLM, let's move to the next phase. So they're not going to just temporarily hold ground. If nobody's going to come after them, let's go seize some more. And that's exactly what happens in a military operation. D-Day, you seize a beachhead. You consolidate there, right? Then you move on to the next objective. And if you consolidate there, if you take it and you consolidate it, then you move on to the next objective. That's exactly what's happening here, and nobody's countering it. The next question is, can the military do something about it? Can they? Well, I think they can. However, this type of asymmetric, unconventional warfare is something that we're very good at offensively. We're not very good at it defensively. But we need to get that way right away. So I'm calling for that. But will it happen? No, because the Department of Defense is loaded with leftist Marxists, as I've been warning about for a long time, just like the rest of the IC and the FBI and the DOJ. We're on our own, ladies and gentlemen. They're not going to do anything. At least I don't see it happening. If it does happen, great. But at this point in time, you can't believe that anybody's coming to save you. If you don't see a reaction to the Seattle takeover and the rest of the cities that they're going to be going into in Washington, you'll see it happen, as I said at the beginning, in Oregon, in California, New York, Maryland, possibly Illinois, which is kind of off of the coastal thing, but it's still there. St. Louis, Austin, it's going to happen if nothing happens here. If the governors twiddle their thumbs and say, we don't care about that, and if Trump uses that because of Article 4 to not get involved, not even having the DOJ go after them criminally, then you know that all of this is what they want, including Trump. So what's going to happen is that they'll take more places, and then they'll seize more property, as I said, and then what they'll do is they'll start their assassinations. And they'll even take out regular citizens that, speak their mind, possibly like, yours truly. That's where this is going. So it's not over with. They're bringing back the COVID thing. They're going to have more of this Antifa, BLM, leftist Marxist activity. You're going to see unconventional warfare, asymmetrical warfare. They're going to start taking out infrastructure and people that stand in their way. This is Maoist revolutionary doctrine. You're seeing it on the ground in live time. This is not a game. This is not a movie. Your life and the lives of your loved ones and their liberty, all of that is at stake right now. Yes, our government's been bad. I've been involved in demonstrating against what horrible things they've done, like McCain. I was down in Phoenix, Arizona, a demonstration against what McCain has done when he was alive. Of course, I was at Bundy Ranch. I've been very vocal. I was actually being interviewed in the late 80s and early 90s just about governmental tyranny. I've been very active. I've seen this coming for a long time. But we're not going to fix the government, and I think I've told you that before. You're going to have to embrace this division, this balkanization, because that's where it's going. And I don't think there's any way to stop it. Not when the leaders fail to use any resolve to even approach the situation. They're so afraid. Black Lives Matter is connected to all this because everybody's afraid of being labeled a racist. Do you see how they're using that? Like I said, I've seen it on all over the place. Even in Utah and Wyoming, all over the place. As a matter of fact, I'm just rambling on here. I saw a lady who immigrated here from Russia, got married. I think she's an American citizen now. She took her husband she took her daughter, who's very young, maybe 2 or 3, something like that, and her husband to a Black Lives Matter Antifa demonstration, and says, "Yeah, that's right. We've got to have diversity." The whites are their own worst enemy. They really are. They've bought this stuff hook, line, and sinker because they don't want to be called racist. Well, I'm not racist, but I'm also not ashamed of being white. And to hell with any of you that say that I should feel otherwise. So prepare. The assassination, political assassination, kinetic phase is about ready to take off. Let's see if my coffee's cold. Yep. Been going for an hour. I should have known. Let's jump to a little bit of chat here. Wow. Yeah, you guys are whoops, sorry. I moved that. It's hard for me to do this, and I apologize. Gary, I can't blame you. Gary says, Roy, I am at the point, just don't give a damn a shit anymore. If they come to my neighborhood, damn the law, I'm going to go for the guns. Well, that's what I've said. We've already seen the people doing that. Just understand the nature of the FBI, the IC, the federal law enforcement agencies, and maybe even your local law enforcement. I'm not saying you shouldn't defend your neighborhoods. I'm just saying they're going to call you the bad people. I'm not saying not to do anything. That's not what I'm saying. You just got to understand where this is. They've had their people in the government for a long time, all the way down to water meter readers, just like I've said. InfraGard is out in mass. I run into these people all the time. And they're such green little, they think they're super secret agents. And I'll look at them and I'll just laugh at them. Oh, but they're a problem. Don't. A baby snake is actually more poisonous than an adult. It's just that it's just obvious who they are, and they're not very good at covering it. They've encouraged people to spy on each other. Look what the governor or the mayor of LA did. Even give money if you rat somebody out who's violating the social distancing or the masks or whatever. You can see where this is, and Trump is responsible. He is the one that his task force set up the guidelines that the governors were then given political cover to do what they're doing. And if Trump didn't realize that was going to happen, he's an idiot. But I think he knew exactly what he was doing. Look at the red flag laws, Operation Guardian I've talked about before. Look at the bump stock ban. Look at the surveillance that he's gone for. He signed the NDA. It goes on and on. As Mark Pantano says, it would have been better not to sign those things. Oh, Roy, you can't politically do that. They'll overrule him. Well, at least then he'd be able to prove his point. He gives up without firing a shot. Yeah, I agree with that, Jane. You say people fail to realize that the term racist is so overused it has no meaning anymore. I agree, but it's still working, isn't it? At least amongst the Republican Party. Look at Mitch McConnell. Yeah, right. Sorry, I couldn't help make fun of him. I understand he has a medical condition. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. But Republicans can't wait to bend over for the Democrats because they're all on the same team. The American people are the ones that keep getting messed over. And in that regard, Antifa and BLM are right. Yeah, Edelson James, decentralization is part of the solution. I don't know how long you've been following me, but I was calling for that a long time ago. You have to use the same tactics. Be careful how I say this. Yeah, decentralization is important because they'll go after the command and control. Plus, you have a lot of it's the old ant thing from the movie Ants. You have one ant stand up, more of them will stand up, and that's more difficult for the governments to control, especially those who are now in this kinetic movement about ready to start that are going to support it. Barr can talk all he wants. He gets up there and he acts so serene and so somber, and he says, this, how he talks, and well, we've got to do this, and this takes time, and that's neurolinguistic programming. He's programming you. Oh, he's slick. He's smooth. Jim Pepe, I guess there's no militia in the selected area. There have been people calling for that, but you see, the problem is, again, no competent authority. If the militia went in there, if a group of people without competent authority cover went in there, they'd be the ones that get arrested. I guarantee you. Now, if the shop owners and those people inside that area resisted, that would be a different story. But they're not going to do it. I haven't seen any evidence of it anyway. Yes, it is biblical prophecy, Star. You're absolutely right. Remember, the evil side uses the Bible as a playbook. And I've been talking about that for a long time. I noticed other people finally started doing it. Both sides use it as their playbook. And actually, the evil side is better at it than the Christians and the spiritual people. They're better at it. And the Bible even says that. It says that the wicked are more wise than the righteous. That's paraphrasing it, but that's basically what it says. The sons of darkness are wiser than the sons of light, because the sons of light just want to live their lives and be good people and all that, but the evil side's always scheming and planning and trying to figure out how to take over. The serpent is the most subtle beast of the field. Apollonia Jones says, "We will be okay. Do not fear." Don't be afraid to fear. Fear is a motivator. A courageous person isn't lacking fear. A courageous person acts regardless of the fear. Fear is a tool to motivate you. You guys are talking amongst each other, and I always appreciate that. Because it's hard for me to sometimes do this as a one-man show. Yeah, War Prophet. Our government is the New World Order. Look at George H.W. Bush's own words. Haven't I said that? Our government really is that. The Anglo-American alliance, and especially the United States, is the problem in the world. China's the other problem. But you notice how those in the United States, as I've talked about, are using China. They want to emulate the Chinese system. Yeah. HRC said it. Bush basically said it. Trump went after the Chinese, at least on the surface. But if you noticed, the trade deals never really occurred. It never really happened. Think about that. And then jumped right on locking down America, going along with that, encouraging it with his task force. Was that to protect us against this Chinese weapons system? It was an overreaction, and I think it was planned, and I still believe that Trump is a part of the takedown of America. Everything points to it. Doc Larson 44, is George Webb's info trustworthy? Well, George Webb is extremely intelligent. His brother Dave Acton follows me. George follows me too, both on Twitter and I think on YouTube. I think George puts out a lot of good information. My problem with George Webb is it's so convoluted nobody can figure out what he's talking about. At least I can't. He has all those boards with, this and that. It reminds me of A Beautiful Mind, when the doctor, Nash there, that was played by Russell Crowe, he's got all these newspapers up and all these different lines going. So in my estimation, the reason why I don't follow Webb too closely is because he's always out in the weeds. I'm not saying that's unnecessary, but if the government's not going to go out and look in the weeds, and George Webb can't get them to do it, what's the point? You got to look at the 60,000-foot view. If you're going to be an operator and go in there and do something about the information, that's different. So I don't follow George Webb, not closely. I appreciate his work, but I just think he's way out in the weeds too much. And Dave Acton calls him out on that too, his own brother. Now, again, no disparaging against George Webb. I mean, he's an incredible guy. He found out about the blackberries, right? That the brothers from Pakistan were doing, linked into HRC and found all kinds of stuff on this whole deal with the Steele dossier and the coup and all that. No, he's very, very good. It's just he gets too detailed, and unless somebody's willing to act on that, he's wasting his time. That's all. My purpose is to give you an overall picture so that you can make your own judgment call. And I'm still too verbose. Look, I've been going for an hour and 15 minutes, right? So, yeah, Booger Dog, that's right. George Webb is PhD level stuff. Miss a class and you're lost. I see. That's my point. And I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying I think it's overkill. George Webb obviously has, I don't know his real background, intelligence. It's obvious, or at least somehow he's been connected to it over time. And I won't say much more than that. He definitely knows his stuff. The problem is that it's almost to the point where it's like the mass media. They're throwing so much stuff at you, you really don't know what to do with it. So the responsibility of a commander staff, a military, let's say that we're in a military staff and Webb's in the staff, okay? Let's say he's the S2 guy, the intelligence guy, bringing all this information in. If I'm the commander and I'm sitting there with my staff, my S1, S2, S3, S4, S5, whatever, and Webb started going down that road, I'd say stop. Give me the main points. What will the enemy likely do? What can we do to counter it? What units are they deploying? What weapons do they have? What's their maneuver? What's their objective? I don't want to hear all this other crap. And neither will my staff. My staff won't put up with that, what Webb does. You melt it down, the S2 melts it down into a coherent brief. And you go way off in the weeds, the commander will shut you down. And that's unfortunately what Webb's problem is, in my estimation, which is why I finally had to give up on him. Not saying his stuff is bad. Not saying he's not intelligent. Not saying he's not proficient. But he's entertaining you. He's not giving you the breakdown. Not really. He's tying you down with Lilliputian details. Maybe he's doing that on purpose. Maybe he is working for another IC. I don't know. I don't think he has the influence, but I could be wrong. Yeah, and we can go back to, as Mark Pantano brings, why is Trump still going along with the illegal immigration? He could have stopped the for instance, he was going to sign the anchor baby, being born here and becoming a citizen. He's going to sign that because that's not a law. He could change that today, and he didn't. He's done nothing like he said he was going to do. So he's been a placebo. He's either unwitting at it, as I've often said, wittingly or unwittingly, he's given the leftist Marxists everything that they want. And he's going to come after your guns, and he's going to give you vaccines, he's going to require you to be tested, get a vaccine. He's going to Kushner is working on DACA again right now. What the hell? Kushner's writing the platform for the Republican Party. He's a leftist New York Democrat. And he screwed up the Trump administration from day one. You can't tell me, even my Republican insider friend, you can't tell me that Trump doesn't know exactly what he's doing, allowing these things to happen. That the only reason why he has Kushner in there is because he can't trust anybody. Batterista, what's my take on Trump's comments on the Seattle situation? Hot air, as usual. All talk, no action. Is he on the phone with the governor, the mayor? I don't know. I don't believe a word he says anymore either. Yeah, Kushner wants to bring in more foreign workers. That's right. We're at 40 million unemployed right now. And it's going to go up. You don't have any friends in the White House. I don't even know where I wonder if Jay Sekulo's even working there anymore. Maybe he got so disgusted he left. Because I have seen neither hide nor hair of him. Sound is off. Is that true, anybody? Or am I 5x5? Some people do this just to get us off topic. Just let me know that the sound is okay. Sometimes YouTube will interrupt it, but I don't see anybody else saying they can't hear. Roy, any guidance for the UK? Wow. Well, you're pretty much in the same boat that we are, as far as I can tell. We have people in the UK that are demonstrating against the government, against what they've done with bringing all of these Islamist terrorists in there. Thanks, Edelson, 5x5. You still have the yellow vests in France. You have the people standing up in Germany. You have, the people and competent scientific medical voices now saying that this entire lockdown has been a hoax, has been at the very least, has been an overreaction with the objective of locking the people down so that the New World Agenda could proceed. Doctors saying we're seeing more suicide deaths now than we are COVID deaths, real COVID deaths. Of course, they call everything a COVID death because you've all had colds, so you're going to test positive, or the older people have all had flu shots, so they're going to test positive. And Trump lets it continue. The EU, the UK, your government lets it continue. Germany lets it continue. Why? Because they're about subjugating the people and destroying mankind. And they all have shown their hand. From Trump to, this little game that Trump plays with the German Chancellor and with Macron and with the Brits. But they're all on the same page. When you boil down all of the details and you look at the overall objective, the objective is to destroy mankind, to take away your liberty, and to subjugate you. That's what it is. Yeah, Oogie Gardner, Taiwan and Sweden never closed and are doing fine. Yeah, and even if you do have spikes, you can mess with statistics all you want. That doesn't make it real. Talk to any statistician. You can give anybody what they want. Look at the polls. You get anything you want from a poll. Trump doesn't like the CNN poll, so he's hired his own polling company. You think they're going to tell him what they want to hear? What he wants to hear? Yeah, probably. Yeah, they'll bend the numbers somehow. That's how it works. Yeah, Samuel Papandrea, your aunt just died. She was over 100 and they labeled it COVID. They need to have as many deaths attributed to COVID as they can to keep the narrative going. Yeah, it's like Jones and others that say you get shot, you got COVID. You're Floyd, you get choked out if he actually died. You got COVID. An airplane crashes tomorrow, God forbid. Everybody on board had COVID. And Trump lets them get away with it. He supposedly defunded the WHO. No. That's under review. They haven't defunded anything yet, and they're actually talking about reinstituting it. The CDC lets that Redfield jerk run the show. And of course you got Fauci and Birx and Gates. Gates is a demon. He is that guy needs to be collared, arrested, prosecuted, and executed. Carlos Castaneda. That's I know that's not your real name. Yes, way back in the year 42 BC, Marcus Cicero warned the Roman citizens of their peril. And I'm doing the same thing today. And a lot of us are. Nancy Morgan Hart. Richard Higgins, Mark Pantano, Mark Passio. Probably don't know who that is. I talked about Passio some time ago. Go look him up, Mark Passio. Actually, Headlines with a Voice Nancy kind of put me on to him. Yeah, Gates isn't a doctor, Edelson. That's exactly right. You or I get up there and spout, "You're not a doctor, you can't give your opinion." Then why can Gates? Yeah, Fauci's a problem, of course. Fauci should be arrested and at least, found guilty, put in prison. I'm all for execution for these bastards because of what they've done. They've been responsible for more people dying than the COVID ever would have done. Shut down the economy, ruining people's lives. Now, I agree. This system of things isn't the best, but you don't do it this way. I could talk a little spiritual stuff, but I don't want to do that right now. Getting back to why God allows these things to happen. He withdraws his presence. He withdraws his protection. And then the evil side uses the playbook, and they feel justified in doing so because you submit to it. That's really as simple as it needs to be. Yeah, again, the Epstein thing, that went away. Barr never investigated that. He and Trump are the only people in the whole world that believe that Epstein committed suicide. What does that tell you? And I know I'm preaching to the choir here. I like that, Jesse. We will have the messengers of God as our army. I pray every day, literally I pray every day, that we will be given an alternative. And it's got to be in here first. It's got to be in your heart and in your mind, because God says he will write his law in your hearts and in your minds. So it's got to be there first. And I've quoted Malachi 4 before. But it has to be done in the physical world as well, because Abraham pitched a tent and planted a tree halfway between Ai and Bethel. Ai is the world, represents the world, and Bethel is the house of God. So there's got to be a material, physical world manifestation of a place of refuge. I'm negotiating with God on that one. I beg for it every day. Because without that, the famous line in Batman that I really like, if the faith of the people has to be rewarded from time to time. Not just in feel-good spiritual emotionalisms, but faith is the substance of things hoped for. Substance, something real, tangible, physical. The evidence, again, something physical, tangible, of things unseen. God needs to give us that now. He's promised it. I didn't make him say it. It's time for him to deliver. Boy, Roy, you're like, man, what are you doing telling God what to do? Moses negotiated with him. Abraham negotiated with him. Make your case with God. Don't just plead. Demand that he fulfill his part of the covenant that he's made with you. Demand it. Just like Moses did, just like Abraham did, just like Jesus did. You must belligerently demand your rights, even from the Creator. He wants men. He doesn't want pussies. Boy, that could open up a whole nother conversation. Okay, we've been going for an hour and a half. I'm going to cut you out, cut you off, cut myself off, let you all get to your daily business. We're in a serious situation here. Recapping. They've gone into a war of maneuver and seizing terrain, seizing objectives. The next movement is, after they consolidate their position, if in fact they are not confronted immediately, they will go towards obtaining more, seizing more areas, and then going kinetic and starting assassinations and the killing of politically active people that oppose them. And anybody else that gets in their way. Or just for fun. They're like People say animals don't kill for fun. Have you ever watched a pack of wolves? Have you ever watched a cougar? Sometimes they do kill for fun. And that's what these people will end up doing. Thanks. I appreciate the message. I'm not so sure it's funny, but yeah, I know what you're saying. Okay, so I'm going to let everybody go. Keep your eyes on the horizon, your ears to the ground. This has moved into another phase. It's very dangerous. And if nobody acts in the government, you better be ready to do it for yourself. And I don't mean to be offensive against them. I mean, you better have your stuff together and be ready to protect yourselves. Governors right now need to activate all their guards. Right now. Not wait until they're at your border or taking over your place. You need to activate them now because we're in a war. This is a war that's being promoted by Soros, Obama, Hillary Clinton, and the Chinese, etc., for the takedown of America. We are having a guerrilla, unconventional warfare conducted against us right now, and it's about ready to go real kinetic. That's all I got. I'm not sure, I always say this, I'm never sure when I'm going to be up again. But I'll keep an eye on things. I am having some folks give me information. But at this point, I'm going to follow my own complaints about George Webb. Again, I respect the guy. He's extremely intelligent and knows how to investigate and all that. But I'm just going to try to follow my thing there. I don't want to get caught in the weeds. The big picture is they're coming for us, and there's nobody to help us. That's the bottom line. The states that can and are willing to stand up need to do so now. Sheriffs need to do so now. You, the people, need to be pushing them that way, demanding cover of competent authority, so that it's like the deputizing of the National Guard in D.C. Okay? To give them competent cover. We need that. And if the commander-in-chief, the president, isn't going to do it, you need it at least from a sheriff or a governor. And I don't think Trump's going to do anything. He's going to sit back with his thumbs up his ass, because that's what he does. I can be disrespectful. Schlichter, Schaefer, Manus, retired military can't, but God put me in a position where I'm not in that. Not that I wanted it. If anybody knows my history, I didn't want it this way. It's the way it happened. I don't know what Lionel's been saying lately. I haven't been watching him that close in the last couple of days. I've been doing too many other things. Okay. You all take care. We'll see you in a few days, okay? Thanks for coming. Thanks, mods, for helping me out. I appreciate all that you do. Please make sure that you're subscribed to Nancy Morgan Hart, Headlines with a Voice, to Mark Pantano, declaringliberty.com, and also there's Mark Passio. You can look him up, Passio. I promote a lot of things. I would say BCP now. BCP gives you a lot of good daily information and an overview, but he's patting Trump on the head all the time, and I think that's a mistake at this point. If we're not willing to call Trump out for his failures, it's not going to do us any good, as Mark Pantano said, to get Trump back in there. Because at least if Biden's in there, like if Hillary had gotten in, we would have all stood up. But at this point, we're all patting, Trump on the head, saying, good boy, we need you in there. And yet he's not doing anything. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. All right, so I'll let you go. Thanks, everybody, for coming out here for now.